Well, I want to keep these things short. So was there anything else that he did? I mean, he was a big fan of Flash, wasn't he? Didn't he think?
Oh, he hated Flash.
He hated Flash.
You know, and here's some folklore about that. When Apple came out with the, not the first iMac, the small blimp thing, there was a larger one. And Adobe had a real problem with it because the bezel on it was Bondi blue. And they said, look, we have professionals that are dealing with color and color management all the time. We don't want all that. We want it to be gray. We want it to recede into the distance. Steve didn't like that. He didn't like anybody telling him what he could do with his hardware.
So I wonder who won that fight.
As well. And the other thing was that all of the Adobe products, they were using their own graphical user interface kit, so their own GUI widgets. And they were tiny and different and alternate to what was standard in the operating system. And he didn't like that either. It's like, well, how dare you go and build all that stuff on top of my fine software? And there was antipathy for a great many years between Adobe and Apple.
Now that was when he got along with the original guy of Adobe, but the next generation, I think he lost his respect for.
I don't know. There's probably a lot more story behind it than that, but I just know that word.
So, did you ever encounter him?
Who, Steve?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I worked with him every week. Had a
You
meeting
worked with him every
He sat
week.
right next to me.
So when he is it true that he could just stare at someone and disintegrate them with his eyes?
He
Was
did
that
not
true?
have laser vision, but he did have pixel level memory.
Pixel level memory.
When we were working on a design with him and he said, you know, that play button, I need some alternatives. Okay, how many would you like? 200. Next week we came in with 200 of them. And he just went, that one. Okay, so we used that one. He said, but there's one little pixel in there that I'd like you to change. And a couple weeks later we came back in and that one had been incorporated into all of our designs and he said, that pixel, we talked about it.
We talked about that pixel.
And so he had, you know, a huge memory for what he liked and what he didn't like, and he changed his mind a lot, but...
Now, why could he be so decisive? He had 200 things, and yet he couldn't putting furniture in his house. Why could he be so decisive in some areas and so just totally indecisive in other areas? Because it didn't matter what kind of furniture he had in his house.
He's mercurial. He was a mercurial man.
Now, if you're not mercurial, well, then what are you?
If you're not mercurial, stolid.
You're Saturnine.
Saturnine.
Now, that's from the book, the Eisenson book.
Huh. Yeah,
You'll come across that.
I'll come across that when I do.
Yes,
when I
and then he says, well, it sounds a lot better to be mercurial than is the other one, which Tim Cook is the other one. He's the Saturnine.
Yeah, the solid, sort of pragmatic.
So how would you rate Mr. Jobs, you know, compared to the other great geniuses, Newton, Einstein, Planck, Edison? Where would he rank as far as having an effect on humanity?
Well, I haven't met those other gentlemen.
But you do know that they've had some influence.
I think Steve's probably the person with the most influence in our generation. His, you know, name recognition is huge, but it's not just his name, it's what he did and what he delivered and how he changed what we do.
So what was there about him that allowed him to look at 200 ones and come up with the one and then be obsessed about that particular pixel? What?
He was just a genius.
It's a big hotel.
With a very specific point of view.